Ka bumi indah tak cacah, ka langit tak mungkin sampai. Kalau karam di rawang bancah, tanah tapi indah tak capai.
Batu Enam, Gombak, is a town in Selangor's eastern region. It is located along the river of Gombak and primarily populated by Minangkabau people from various West Sumatra tribes. The spiritual heritage of the area was born early this century. Since then, it continued to spiritually prosper and thrive to become a unifying point of the community known as Masjid Lama Batu Enam, Gombak. Selangor, one of Malaysia's 14 states, is located in the peninsular Malaysia's west coast and spans an area of 8,000 square kilometers. Selangor is bordered on the north by Perak, on the east by Pahang and Negeri Sembilan, and on the west by the Straits of Malacca. Selangor is divided into 9 districts, namely Sabak Bernam, Hulu Selangor, Kuala Selangor, Gombak, Klang, Petaling, Hulu Langat, Kuala Langat, and Sepang. Selangor's history and economic development have been closely linked with 2 rivers, the Klang River and the Langat River. Gombak is located in the eastern part of the districts of Selangor, Darul Ehsan, Malaysia. Many settlements in this region were established by the Minangkabau immigrants with the free consent of Sultan Selangor up until 1974. Gombak district covers approximately 65,000 hectares of land. In comparison to the other districts in Selangor, it is considered the 3rd smallest district. The ruggedy hills and picturesque greenery dominate the contour and terrain of this district, particularly in the east, north, and west. The center region used to be composed of low-lying jungle areas and bukits, cleared for growing crops and fruit farms in the past. The dominant rivers in the area are the Gombak River, the Klang River, and the Batu River. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, many villages have emerged over the years, starting from the Gombak River up to the Klang River, including the kampongs in Batu Enam. These villages were set up by the appointed village head called a penghulu, who got the land title and funding from chiefs such as the pioneering Sultan Puasa, who helped establish many Minang and Mandailing settlements along the Gombak River. A penghulu would first lead the jungle clearing of their new home with the efforts of gotong royong, followed by the construction of important spaces such as suraos and homes. The Minang communities were tight-knit and formed village units based on origin or cultural groups. Hence, there are multiple villages within Batu Enam and each have their own masjids and community halls. These new villages were addressed with the milestones, Batu, of Gombak Road. In order to understand the depth of the culture, traditions, and architecture of the Minang community in Gombak, let's take a look back to one of the biggest waves of migrations that originated from West Sumatra. Sumatra lies in Southeast Asian territories and is the 2nd largest island in the Malay archipelago. In fact, the central and west regions of Sumatra are home to numerous Minangkabau tribes upholding the customs and traditions that are deep-rooted within their societies. Islam had reached Sumatra by Arab traders and was first embraced by the Acehnese in northern Sumatra. Most of the Minangkabau clans had converted to Islam by the influence of the Acehnese. Many clans also converted after the Padri Wars between reformist Muslim pilgrims and traditional Minang chiefs aided by the Dutch. Seeking refuge in Tanah Melayu, Sumatran migrants brought Islam along to their settlements in masses. It was a core part of their identity and pride. Merantau, or wandering, is an essential part of the Minangkabau culture, as it represents their passion for finding new discoveries, gaining knowledge, and sharing views and beliefs. During the prime era of the free trade in the 15th century AD, many of these clans uprooted from their homelands and migrated to Tanah Melayu. Settlements were established in the upper districts of the Klang River, including Gombak.
Yang ramai penduduk di sini orang Minang, lebih Sebang 3. Jadi puak-puak kami semua ramai di Sebang 3. Sini memang ramai orang Minang. Gombak ni daripada Sebang 3 ke atas tu memang ramai.
The settlement of Batu Enam is located in the Gombak district. Majority of Batu Enam's population is made up of West Sumatra's Minangkabau people, particularly from the suku of Bonjol and Talu. Around 1913, Batu Enam was opened by Datuk Haji Muhammad Rashad, commonly known as Datuk Kuning. He is the youngest son of Datuk Sri Maharaja, a West Sumatran ruler from the Piliang tribe of Minangkabau. The original settlers of Batu Enam were invested in agriculture. Two prominent villages of Batu Enam are Kampung Changkat and Kampung Kerdas. Kampung Changkat used to be a hilly orchard full of fruit trees such as mangosteen, durian, and banana bushes. Kampung Kerdas, on the other hand, used to be a low-lying paddy field. Agriculture was the dominant activity of the community, and mining and merchandising was common too. Moreover, various river activities were common, such as fishing, swimming, water rafting, and many more. In comparison, the Gombak River used to be larger and cleaner before the development of roads and housing. Because the river was so significant to the community, the residents erected a masjid close to it as soon as they established the settlement. Masjid Lama Batu Enam was built to serve the fundamental purpose of prayer and also served as the focal point for communal activities, meetings, tahfiz, madrasa, preparing janazah, and many more. It was truly the core of the community. The architectural style of the masjid is classified as traditional vernacular Nusantara architecture with Javanese Minang influence. These traditional masjids had typical square-based plans, multiple tiered roof, and an integral system of timber pillars and beams. The masjid went through numerous changes over the years, and despite it being built by the hands of the locals, it withstood the test of time and still is of great importance in Batu Enam. Sometime in the 1920s, the masjid was known as Masjid Batu Enam. According to the current caretaker of the masjid, Encik Malik Sohod, the initial location of the masjid was adjacent to the Gombak River, where the current Dewan Orang Ramai Kampung Kerdas was built.
Yang tanah ni wakaf daripada sepupu datuk kami lah, moyang 3 peringkat daripada Haji Ahmad ni kan, moyang kami lah. Tanah ni je lah. Sebelum ni masjid ni di bawah tapak dia, di tepi sungai Gombak tu.
The timber chengal was used for the suku guru columns and post and beam structural elements. The original masjid had a 2-tiered atap roof with timber structural elements that have been reused in the new masjid. The old roofing material might have been shingles made of nipa palm leaves, commonly called atap, as most of the dwellings made by migrant Sumatran communities had thatched palm roofs on papan houses. The walls of the original masjid were made of matted bamboo and were built on the ground. Some believe that the chengal columns were brought from Sumatra, while others believe that the material was locally sourced but built with Sumatran craftsmanship. Because of the flooding of the Gombak River, the locals decided to find an alternate location for the masjid. The local community assisted in the masjid's relocation on a waqf property supplied by Ahmed bin Ali, who was the great-great-grandfather of Encik Malik Sohod, on lot 3347 adjacent to Jalan Gombak. This newly constructed masjid maintained 4 of the original chengal pillars and the timber roof construction.
Okey, kalau
kita lihat sekarang, duduk dalam ni kalau tengok macam tak ada dah bangunan yang bangunan lama kan. Yang masih kekal lah struktur yang masih kekal. Kalau tengok tiang ni memang tiang kayu ni, lepas tu dengan bumbung tu memang kekal. Bumbung kita tak ubah apa-apa, cuma yang extension bumbung tu pakai kan metal decking kan, itu barulah. Tapi yang asal tile kan, roofing tile tu, itu memang asal, memang tak ubah, tak usik apa-apa tu.
The new additions to the masjid had brick walls up to waist height and then panelled with vertical wooden pieces. The tops of the walls had wire mesh fenestrations that allowed for open ventilation. The masjid had 2 double-leaf wooden windows on each wall and 3 entrances into the prayer hall. The water was sourced from a stone well behind the masjid, and there was an ablution well called Qula. There was no sign of a minaret with this structure, only a traditional wooden drum called the Batu, which was used to signify the time for prayer. There were no additional ornaments recorded during the time. The 2-tier pyramidal roof is the most remarkable element of Masjid Lama, Batu. The fundamental structural element of the tiered roof are the 4 center columns that support the uppermost roof layer, called the brunjung. These 4 pillars, known as suku guru, are arranged 2 by 2 in the main prayer hall. At the peak of the roof, a white cement mix mustoko is placed as a design element to further signify the masjid roof. The mustoko is used symbolically on top of a roof to signify knowledge or learnedness. The terracotta tiles on the roof were from the original components from 1931. The roof is adorned with a wooden fascia board with simple geometric repetitions. Although there were no distinct surambi, the masjid building was surrounded by an apron. The surrounding scenery was a vast paddy field with many scattered rumah papan amidst the greenery. Furthermore, a freshwater stream trickled down the right side of the masjid. The first major renovations occurred in the 1960s. During this time, the original walls were maintained. However, an outskirt of 3 centered brick arches were constructed, creating corridors right outside the main prayer hall. Furthermore, a concrete gutter was added to the roof of the masjid, which still remains to this day. The main prayer hall was also extended on the right side of the mihrab, with a metal sheet roof extending from the original clay tile roof. The Qula is presumed to have been made of concrete, 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. The reopening of the masjid was initiated by the former Menteri Besar Selangor, Yang Amat Berhormat Tan Sri Datuk Haji Muhammad bin Haji Muhammad Taib in 1961. Additional features include new asbestos ceiling, installation of wooden fans from India, and a female prayer space separated by curtains. Many things in the neighborhood changed soon after. The paddy field and the orchards that had been conspicuous in Batu Enam, Gombak, had vanished. Wet rice cultivation was discontinued due to the economic factors and the fast growth of residential and commercial buildings. The last memory of the paddy field was seen in the early to mid-1970s. There was also a kafa school that taught Fardu Ain lessons to the community kids. This was a timber structure on the right side of the masjid.
Kalau kita menghadap ke kiblat, sebelah kanan tu, situ ada kolah untuk ambil wuduk, dan beduk, panggil beduk beduk tu memang ada dulu. Lepas tu ada satu bangsal, nak kata bangsal lah, dia tempat ustaz mengajar kanak-kanak mengaji Quran. Kalau tengok sini dekat tangga sekolah kafah kan tu, itu bahagian tu lah dulu memang ada satu nak kata apa, bukan bangunan lah, macam A-shape punya bumbung tu, tapi ada dinding lah. Situlah dulu ada ustaz 2 orang yang ngajar kanak-kanak di situ.
In the 1980s, construction of residential houses known as Rumah Batu began to be developed in Batu Enam. As new people came into the expanding areas, many of the old settlements vanished. Jalan Gombak's expansion to a 4-lane road began slowly and continued until the early 2000s. In 1984, a shocking event took place for the masjid's community. The Jabatan Agama Islam Selangor converted the masjid to a surau, which was one of the most significant changes to the masjid. This move was reportedly intended to attract people to visit the recently opened Masjid Ash-Shakirin at Batu Lima. Despite the fact that the local community was upset, the masjid remained as a surau for about 25 years, until it was reinstated back to a masjid on the 19th of January 2009 upon an appeal made by Dato' Hassan Ali, the Wakil Rakyat of Gombak Setia. In the early 1990s, many of the original timber buildings around the masjid were demolished. The stone well was also removed along with the Kafa school. The Kolah was relocated towards the left veranda of the masjid, where it still stands today. The Kolah remodeling was a waqf by Haji Mukarram. There was also the addition of washrooms built for both men and women. This was done so that the new Kafa school, Sekolah Kafa Integrasi Masjid Lama Batu Enam Gombak, could be built on the vacant lot between the masjid and the stream. It was built of concrete and had an open assembly area on the ground floor with all the classrooms on the first floor. There were no major renovations in the early 2000s. However, after 2008, some refurbishments were done in Masjid Lama Batu Enam. During this time, metal sheets were used to extend the original roof over the outdoor passageways. The masjid added an adhan room and a storage room on the left side of the mihrab. The original interior walls of the masjid's prayer hall were removed. Suspended fluorescent lighting was installed, along with ceiling and wall-mounted fans. The arched walls on the outer corridor became the exterior wall, and the corridors became additional prayer space. The facade in the roof of the masjid could still be seen from Jalan Gombak. In 2011, the second refurbishment was completed. The masjid was primarily renovated for aesthetic reasons, with new paint and other improvements. The main entrance was also relocated to the masjid's left side, near the Kolah, and the front wall of the main prayer hall was decorated extensively with ceramic tiles. More ornate light windows were fixed into the building and air conditioning was finally installed. Other masjid facilities, such as a funeral room, bilik janaza, and an office meeting room, were built during this time. The hall to the right of the mihrab, which serves both as an additional prayer room and a meeting place, was also renovated as part of the prayer hall. To highlight the main entrance, a tiny silver dome was put above the entry roof expansion. Sometime around 2014, the right side of the masjid was joined with the hall of the Kafa school, creating a gathering spot or an additional prayer space. In 2017, the last major renovation was completed, which included the construction of a first level above the former masjid entrance. Every Friday prayer, it was noted that they would periodically close one lane of Jalan Gombak's major road to accommodate the large congregation outside the masjid. This higher floor was built to accommodate more worshippers, especially during Eid and Friday prayers. The first level is also utilized as a female prayer hall. Doors from the first floor prayer space lead to the original rooftop of the masjid. Moreover, the asbestos ceiling has been replaced with plaster ceiling with recessed lighting. Masjid Lama Batu Enam's architecture reflects the importance of Islam and growth of society in the early years of Selangor, when the Sumatran people migrated to Tanah Melayu. The founder and the pioneering community of the area built the masjid with the style of traditional vernacular Nusantara architecture with Javanese Minang influence, which still stands strongly today. Despite the masjid's age and the various developments around the masjid, the significant adaptation of materials has made impressive architecture. The masjid's design has evolved considerably, from having a simple square-shaped design with simple functions to more extended layouts for the community and the development of the surrounding environment. This demonstrates the flexibility of a masjid to serve social and economic needs, as can be seen by the renovations of Masjid Lama Batu Enam, Gombak. The current state of Masjid Lama Batu Enam does not reflect its original form during the year 1931. However, the pillars and the roof structure have been preserved and are vital to the original masjid's stability and authenticity. Due to the masjid's spatial arrangement and location, multiple extensions could be made throughout the years. To summarize, the roles of this building has been well defined throughout history as a place of prayer, religious education, and other activities in the early years. Later on, the building continued to bring the community together for various purposes, demonstrating the ability of a masjid to accommodate the change in social and economic necessities in modern times and remain sustainable and evergreen.
Hukum adiang manahan bandiang, bungka gano manahan uji mangko. Tak ada hukum baru diang, adat jo jarak tak sama dikaji.